Well, good morning. I'm Jeff Posgate, and I also enjoy the incredible gift of being one of the pastors at St. Paul's. Great to be with you in worship today. I want to say a special thanks again to those of you who are guests. You're with us for the first time. That really means a lot to us. I don't know if this is good news for y'all or bad news or just news, but as of today, Thanksgiving Day is 18 days away. Yeah, the holiday season is on the horizon again, and I know for a lot of people, as they anticipate Thanksgiving Day and the meal that day, they're thinking about what the Thanksgiving table is going to look like, what that meal preparation is going to be. Because Thanksgiving Day, for many, is a different meal than any other day. It's a meal when there's more stuff on the table than there usually is, and a greater variety of types of foods are there. Maybe some dishes that you don't see any other time of the year, and maybe some favorite dishes that just get trotted out once a year on that particular holiday occasion. It's an occasion where the table often has more people around it than it does at any other time, and it's a day when, if you happen to be a turkey, it's not a good day for you. But as I look at Thanksgiving, I notice that there's a concept around Thanksgiving Day that everybody seems to agree on, whether you're a person who would say that you're someone of faith or you're a person who wouldn't put that label on yourself. Everybody seems to use, at one time or another on Thanksgiving, a word on which we all agree that it's an important word for the day. And the word is blessed. It's a day of being blessed, right? I mean, it's a day where we are thankful for the many ways that we have been blessed. We're thankful for a table just stuffed and overflowing with food. We're thankful for family, and we're thankful for friends, and we're thankful for our comfort and our safety in the nation in which we live. And we're thankful for 4 straight days of nonstop football and lots of other things that go along with Thanksgiving. Maybe you're one of those families that when everybody's together for Thanksgiving Day, before you have the meal, everybody has to you go around and everybody has to say something they're thankful for. Everybody has to say some blessing that they're thankful for. Kids hate that usually because they're ready to eat. And you've always got somebody that takes the high road and says, I'm so thankful for the love at this table. And you've got somebody else who takes a different road and says, I'm just thankful for the potatoes and mashed and gravy, and I just want to eat. Okay? But regardless, it's all about blessing. Thanksgiving is about being blessed, and that's what we want to convince ourselves. But is that really what being blessed is all about? Having an overstuffed table and being overstuffed that day? Is it about family and friends and abundance and comfort and safety and all of that? What about people who don't have all that stuff? They just not blessed? God or whatever doesn't like them as much? Stinks to be them? I remember a Thanksgiving once when my wife Elaine and I did not feel particularly blessed in the common way we think of being blessed at Thanksgiving. It was just shortly after 2 of our 3 children had gotten married within a year of one another. And we faced that Thanksgiving that all parents of married children will ultimately face. The Thanksgiving when your child and his or her spouse go to the other set of parents for the holiday. That particular Thanksgiving, both of our married children were going to other households for the holiday, and as bad as that was, what made it worse was by that time we had 2 little granddaughters, and they had the audacity to take those granddaughters with them when they went, without consulting us when they went on Thanksgiving, so we weren't going to have them around either. Now, our youngest son was in college, and he was coming home for the holiday to be with us, and we were very, very grateful for that. But it was just going to be the 3 of us together. It wasn't going to be Thanksgiving the way we really wanted it to be. And because it was only 3 of us, it was going to be a fairly sparse table that day. So it just, in blessing language, it just didn't feel like the blessing that Thanksgiving was supposed to be. But as unblessed as Elaine and I felt that particular Thanksgiving, It wasn't anything close to what was being experienced by a friend of ours named Gary. Gary Warner and his wife Shirley were leaders in the church that we were a part of at that time. Great people, dynamic followers of Jesus, and just had a real impact for the kingdom. But that particular Thanksgiving, I could not think about Gary and his wife Shirley without thinking about the day not very many months before then, when Gary called me in a panic and said that Shirley, who had been at a women's ministry meeting that day, had collapsed at that meeting and was on her way by ambulance to a hospital. And how when Gary and I met the ambulance at the emergency room, Shirley was completely non-responsive. And how within the hour, all of her vital signs were crashing. And how by mid-afternoon, she was on complete life support. And how by that evening, I had to stand by Gary and be with Gary as he made the most horrific decision of his life to withdraw life support and let her go. Blessed that Thanksgiving? I don't think so. So what does it really mean to be blessed? Is it just about being stuffed, having stuff, enjoying abundance? We're going to look this month at what blessing really means. Now, if we're going to examine an ancestor in our faith around whom the word bless gets thrown more than any other, that has to be Abraham. Abraham and his wife Sarah, who were originally known as Abram and Sarai, were a well-to-do couple that lived about 4,000 years ago in a region that we now call the Fertile Crescent, or in and around the Persian Gulf area. Now, by standards of success in those days, which wasn't money, it was more livestock and possessions and power and things like that, by the standards of that day, Abraham was extremely successful and very, very blessed. He had cattle, he had sheep, he had herds of camels, he had servants in abundance. He even had a small army that he could use for protection. By any standard then, in fact, by any standard now, he was a man we look at and say, wow, that's a man who is absolutely blessed. Now, one way I have to say that Abraham and his wife Sarah weren't blessed is that they were unable to have children. In their culture, that was a big deal for having a next generation, descendants, to kind of carry on what you had amassed and carry on your family name. Still, they had that disappointment, but still, they had a lot. So even with not having kids, things would have been fine for Abraham and Sarah. A life of abundance and success and bounty. Kind of like an overflowing spread on a Thanksgiving table, stuffed, blessed. Would have been great. But in Abraham's advanced years, somehow, some way, he heard, sensed, or felt something from a God that he did not know, but a God who obviously knew him well. Here's what happened. The Lord had said to Abram, "Go from your country, your people, and your father's household to the land I will show you. I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you, and I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you, I will curse. And all the peoples on earth will be blessed through you." That's a whole lot of use of the word bless. But here's the thing. By any measure, then and now, Abraham was already blessed. So what's with this God who comes waltzing into this already blessed, already overstuffed guy and says, hey, you know what? I'm going to show you what it really means to be blessed. This can only mean that God is changing the definition of being blessed. God's changing the definition of being blessed for Abraham. And this is where we have to sit up and take notice, because this God who invaded Abraham's life is the very same God who has been made fully known to us in Jesus of Nazareth, the crucified and risen. And the same God who says to us now, as he said to Abraham then, everything you thought you knew about what it means to be blessed, forget all that. I'm about to lead you into what being blessed really means. So the first thing God indicates to Abraham is that in order to experience just how big and game-changing this new definition of blessing is, he's going to have to get up and walk away from everything that's familiar to him. His homeland, people that he's been around all his life, whatever religion he was practicing, familiar turf. And not just all of that, but he's got to get up and walk away from the definition of being blessed as he's known it all his life. And that's exactly what God asks us to do. We're invited to give up our dependence on everything that the world tells us we should use to measure being blessed. Everything. Wealth, possessions, status, appearance, power, influence, achievement, other people. There's nothing wrong with any of that stuff. It just does not define what being blessed really means. Blessing and an abundant life is found in something, really in someone else. Jesus himself said, "Now this is eternal life, that they know you, the only true God, and Jesus Christ, whom you have sent." This is where blessing is found. It's not in stuff and being stuffed. It's in a relationship, the central relationship for which we're designed. It's in knowing and yielding and following the same God who upended Abraham's life. And to be blessed, we've got to put ourselves, just like Abraham, put ourselves in a position to experience what real blessing is like. And this is where Abraham is our model. In order to experience real blessing, he had to put himself in a position to experience genuine blessing. Basically, he had to move toward God. And one of those moves toward God had to be practicing generosity in the face of a generous God. And he had to trust God completely. So let's look at each one of these. First, Abraham had to move toward God. He couldn't just stay stationary and passive and wait for God's blessing to wash over him. He had to pack it all up and move out. And that could not have been easy. Abraham was at an age where he was supposed to be able to just lay back and enjoy the bounty of all his success. He didn't know where God was sending him. He didn't know what the outcome would be. He had to have lots of questions. God, who are you really? Why are you asking me to do all this? How's all this going to work out? Where am I going? How am I going to know when I get there? You ever had questions like that about God? Maybe you got a trust issue with God. You have a hard time trusting God. Maybe you've gone through some struggle or some suffering, and maybe you're going through it right now. It makes you question God. Maybe you're just looking at the world around you and wondering, is God really involved or here at all? You could be thinking, you know what, when I get all my questions answered and when I get this whole faith journey thing figured out, then I'll make a move toward God. But here's the thing, that's not how it works. Abraham had to pack up everything, including his questions, and take a step toward God. What would it look like for you and me to pack up everything, including our questions, and take a step toward God? One of those steps toward God is to practice generosity. And Abraham experienced that. Abraham and his entourage had a lot of experiences on this journey that was God-driven. One of those was a battle. There was a battle in which what Abraham's nephew, Lot, and his people had been overtaken and captured and stolen by a group of raiders, and Abraham went after them on behalf of his nephew, and he won. He prevailed over them. Now, by the practices of battle in the ancient world, if you win a battle and you gain spoils from your enemy, that's yours. It belongs to you. You can do anything that you want to with it. So that was the benefit that came to Abraham and his people by winning this battle. Now, in the course of coming back from that battle, Abraham is extended hospitality. He's extended a welcome by a king named Melchizedek, a priest king named Melchizedek, who was the king of a town called Salem, which we think is probably the original place that is now the city of Jerusalem in Israel. Here's what happened. After Abram returned from his victory, Melchizedek, the king of Salem and a priest of the Most High, brought Abram some bread and wine. Melchizedek blessed Abram with this blessing. Blessed be Abram by God Most High, creator of heaven and earth, and blessed be God Most High, who has defeated your enemies for you. Then Abram gave Melchizedek a tenth of the good he recovered. Now Melchizedek, he was practicing ancient hospitality. It's a hospitality we can kind of link to. Did you hear him mention bread and wine? That's the very thing that we're going to be sharing in Holy Communion in just a minute. That's God's welcome to us, just like it was Melchizedek's welcome to Abram, and a sign of grace and a sign of hospitality. He's doing what's expected in the ancient world. But what Abraham did was something unexpected. It was an uncommon generosity. Now remember, the spoils of war are his. He doesn't have to give anything away. Nobody would expect him to. But he recognizes God has done something powerful here. Melchizedek has noted that it was God who did this. And to honor God, and to honor the one who spoke on God's behalf and is obviously working on God's behalf, Abram gives a tenth of what he has gained. And that's a generosity practice that has gone from Abraham to this very day. To give to the work of God a tenth of what God has given us, or really to live on 90% of what God has given us. Abram discovered as we can that genuine blessing from God is tied to cultivating a generous heart. Abraham put himself in a blessable place by practicing generosity, and we can do that today as well. He is, again, our model for this. We put ourselves in a blessable place by practicing generosity as we are coming to the end of 2017, are considering what are we going to do in terms of our generosity to support that mission, to make more stories like you saw earlier happen in 2018. What step forward can we take? What step toward God can we make? For those who are considering this, here are some ways practically that you can make those steps. If you're somebody who hasn't given before, you can become a first-time giver, making an intentional decision about giving a regular amount on a regular basis. If you already are giving something, you can consider becoming an intentional giver. The first one's a first-time giver, then an intentional giver based on giving a certain percentage of your income. If you're not in percentage giving, maybe start it at 2-3% of your income. You can become a growing giver, increasing what you give from your income by a percentage point. For 3%, you go to 4, 4% go to 5, and so on. You can take the step of being a tithing giver, committed to 10% of your income. Or you can become an extravagant giver. If you're tithing and that's become something routine and easy, maybe God's calling you to something greater. What would it take for each one of us to take a step toward God, a next step in generosity, and thus placing ourselves, like Abraham, in a blessable space? Finally, Abraham had to trust God completely. God promised Abraham and Sarah they'd be the parents of a great nation, through whom all the world would be blessed. That would be hard for them to believe, because they'd been unable to have children. But God said, I will surely bless you and make your descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky and the sand on the seashore. That's going to be pretty hard to do if you haven't had a kid. But God promised it and invited Abraham and Sarah to trust Him. Have you ever been in their position? where you want to trust God, but all the evidence is looking to the contrary for you? You know? You don't see any way you're blessable, any way God has any interest at all. You look at your empty wallet. You look at the pain in your family. You look at the crushing memories from your past. You look at the job that isn't yours. You look at the good health that's a distant memory. And you cannot even imagine that you're blessable, and trusting God is the last thing on your radar. I'm going to give you an assignment. Find a Bible. If you've got a Bible with you, look this up. If you don't have a Bible with you, there's Bibles in the slots under the seats before you. And look up Genesis chapter 21, verse 2. 22, verse 2. And you will find there the ending of the story of how Abraham and his wife put them in a blessable space, themselves in a blessable space by trusting God completely with the impossible task of having descendants against all odds and evidence. So what being blessed means is different in the hands of this God. It's not just about health and possessions and success and security and friends and family, as great as all that stuff is. It's not just about an overflowing Thanksgiving Day table. It's about something more. And we realize it by moving toward God, practicing God-like generosity, and by trusting God completely, even when every indicator around us says not to. We put ourselves in a position to be blessed. And sometimes we just stumble into it. On that Thanksgiving, when my wife Elaine and I were not feeling very blessed, we decided, well, we're not going to have a big meal. We're not going to have any family stuff going on. Besides our son being home, we might as well just do something with the day. And kind of like what's done here at St. Paul's in many places, our community had a ministry through which meals, cooked Thanksgiving meals, were prepared and delivered to people who wouldn't otherwise have them. And so we went to the church gymnasium where this community-wide project was going on to volunteer to drive meals to places. And as soon as we walked in the door, looking up at the serving line where people were actually carving the turkeys and serving up the stuffing and all that, one of the first people we saw was our friend Gary. His first Thanksgiving without his wife. Didn't have a lot of family, so he was going to be alone. Alone and facing the Thanksgiving from hell. And there he was. We'd asked Gary to come and to have Thanksgiving snacks, such as it was that day. He didn't have anybody, we didn't have anybody else there. Thinking we were doing something nice for him. As we sat down at a meal with him, yeah, there were tears and there was sadness, and it was not a stuffed meal by any means. But we watched in awe as a man found a way on one of the first of many of the worst holidays of his life to say, somehow, some way, God is still trustable, and I am still blessed. I asked Gary this week, how did you do that? He said, well, I love you and Elaine, but I really didn't want to come. I didn't want to do anything that day. I just wanted to pull the covers up over my head and just not be. But with whatever ounce of motivation he could muster, he took a step toward God. He practiced an uncommon generosity at the worst of times. And he trusted that somehow God would make something of it. Maybe we shouldn't be surprised at this definition of blessing that God has given us, because after all, God took an amazing step toward us in Jesus. God practiced uncommon generosity, Jesus giving up everything, being with God, to become one of us. And Jesus faced the horror of the cross, trusting that there would be something on the other side. Maybe that's what blessing has been about all along.